Slate asks a really interesting question. Do adult children owe their parents anything once they become adults? So our parents spend a tremendous amount of money, time, effort in raising us and taking care of us. But what if parents are abusive throughout a child's life? When that parent becomes extremely ill or is all of a sudden poor, do the children that he or she abused, whether mentally or physically, have an obligation to take care of them?
Look, I'm a big believer in you got to be good to your parents, right? They're your mom, they're your dad, they raised you. Don't be a dick, okay? And I even believe your parents can be jerks to you, and you have to give them wide leeway, okay?
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
What do you define as a jerk?
I don't know. People get upset at their parents for everything, and remember, they're your parents. They're older. They don't always do the right thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, norms change, culture changes. Sometimes they're stuck in the old ways, etc. So it seems like, oh, I can't believe they did that. Or they're human beings and they have normal frailties and stuff. You know, my mom would leave me at the soccer games and forget about it. And I'd sit there for a couple hours. It happens. Okay. But she was great otherwise. She loved me to death.
I know, but
sometimes she forgot.
That's such a tiny little thing.
Okay, now, so that's my point. On the other hand, if your parents beat you, well, then it's a totally different equation, right? If they're sexual, fuck that. You don't know them a goddamn thing. They owe you a lot. And you didn't ask to be born. They did it, right? And probably had fun doing it. And then, and then if they abuse you, okay. Now, the flip side is psychological abuse, then we're in a super gray zone.
I think that if there was psychological abuse, so for instance, there was a case of a woman named Rochelle, who, she's 37 years old. Her mom was extremely mentally abusive to her. She basically said hideous things to her. Her brother died at the age of 18, and her mother was an alcoholic, by the way, which is part of the reason why she was so hideous to her. When the brother died, Rochelle put everything together so he could have like a proper burial and funeral and all of that other stuff. And the mother said that he was defective and needed to die. So that's just an example of how abusive she was. Now, she cut communication with him after her brother died, and they stopped talking for 13 years. 13 years later, she found out that the mother was living in an area that was affected by some severe storm. So she reached out to her mom to make sure everything was okay, and then she started spending time with her mother once every other week, and then she started having like post-traumatic stress disorder. All of these negative feelings started to come back, and she couldn't handle it. And I think that you don't owe your parents anything. If your parents put you through that type of psychological torture, you need to take care of the people that love you and the family that you've established. That comes number one.
The problem is I have such a different perspective because my parents were so great to me overall.
I know, so were
right?
mine, yeah.
Right, so that I feel like, don't be a dick to your parents. They raised you, they were so good to you, right? Except those parents weren't good to them, you know? And so, no, look, you owe something to your kids. Right?
Definitely.
You had your kids, you owe them at least 18 years, right? And then they're on their own, you want to feel that way, okay, that's fine, right? But I guess one of my other problems here is that in my life, a lot of people get too emotional about what some parent did, and then they cut them off. Mm-hmm. And that sucks, right? Like, oh, the dad said something wrong to my mother-in-law. Yeah, because he's 84 years old, or he's 68, or just dude, let it go. I'm not going to speak to my dad. Go talk to your fucking dad. What's the matter with you?
Yeah, I think the difference is whether you're abused or whether you've just had some people just have a bad relationship. They don't have chemistry with their parents, for instance, right? They butt heads a lot. Everyone has their issues with their parents, but obviously there is a clear line of mental abuse or physical abuse. And when that's the case, if going back and helping your parents is making your life traumatic or chaotic, I have no problem cutting off ties. And don't allow other people to pressure you into communicating with your parents again if you don't feel comfortable doing it, because that's another part of it. You know what I mean? Like, other people will get into the mix and they'll be like, basically saying what you're saying, except in cases of abuse, no, maybe it doesn't make sense.
The problem is there's a lot of sensitive people with the mental abuse part, right? Half of it is, or maybe more than half, is totally true, right? there's a lot of people like, oh, mental abuse.
Like, I like that you're drawing this like scenario of, an overly sensitive child who cuts communication with his or her parent because of, nothing big. But we're actually biologically driven to maintain a relationship with our parents, even if they actually are abusive. And that's because it's a survival mechanism, so there.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. I would, in those situations, which are more common, as I keep saying, I would counsel very strongly to cut it off. You don't need them. You think you need them, but you don't need them.